Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Digital Craft Festival recording of a model making session with the brilliant and awesome model maker, Jim Parkyn. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Andy. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks. It's a lovely occasion again to get involved with lots of creatives, and Digital Craft Festival taking place at the 26th to 28th of March. And it's, again, Sarah James has pulled it all together and brought you in to show us how to make something. So why don't you tell us, Jim, what are we going to be making today?
Well, fabulous. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm sorry I can't be there in person doing it live, but here we are recording our session. And today I'm going to be making, or we're going to be making, daffodils. So I shall attempt to lift it safely from the...
Oh, that looks fantastic. Look at the little characters in there. I know that your whole career is about making characters come to life. And that really is already a little character to those daffodils.
Well, I think I was quite inspired by, well, I've always been inspired by Alice in Wonderland, but it's one of those things that really stood out, that one scene with these brilliant trumpet-faced daffs in that, and I thought, well, actually, it's quite a nice thing to use as inspiration, and yeah, bring it into the 3D world.
Fantastic. Okay, so first of all, what sort of equipment do people need today? If anyone's sat there and they want to pause this and run off and get things, what do they need?
Absolutely. Well, it couldn't be simpler, really. Well, it could be simpler, but not much is the answer. I've got a few cocktail sticks. Always good. Now, if you've got something like a bamboo skewer or something like that, then that is even better.
So I've actually got one of these here, Jim. So this one is, I mean, they're quite, when you snap them, they kind of split a little bit, but as long as you get rid of those little burrs, they seem really useful.
Yeah, they're a great sculpting tool, and they're a great support for the stem of a daffodil as well. Mine are going to be a bit shorter. I'm going to go for dwarf daffodils for this one, but you can choose your length for that as well, so that's great. So yes, cocktail sticks or kebab sticks like that would be absolutely brilliant. Or if you've got mixing sticks from, you know, a coffee shop, remember those? Then you could use those as well as your support. And then I've got brown for the soil. Makes a good base to actually stick your daffodil into, and then I've got a bit of green, some yellow and some orange. Now you could choose the colour of your daffodil, so you could go for a white daffodil with an orange trumpet or a pure yellow. It all depends on your personal preference, really.
I know that you're very much up for people using your sessions as a kind of inspiration to try things out, so they could think of other flowers. Now I've got something that I know you recommend, which is just a rainbow pack. So you could make a red, a blue, or whatever flower colour you wanted. And this is the plasticine that you tend to use, isn't it? The Nucleus one.
That's right, absolutely. So I think the rainbow pack just offers you a great variety. So you can make lots of smaller things. So you only get one bar of each colour, one stick of each colour, but you do get those 8 colours. The only thing it doesn't include is black, but that's not always a bad thing. I think people overuse black clay and it can end up making your sculpt very grubby. So I do have a small amount of it to use for pupils. But again, you could choose a pupil colour. It doesn't have to be black. So yeah, I think that's a good starting point.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is let Jim crack on, because me and Jim could chat all day. You might wonder why I've got all this stuff here and the little carrot here. I've actually taken part in Jim's sessions throughout the last year, learning from the master himself how to make things out of plasticine. So that's why it's such a privilege to host this session. So Jim, over to you. Let's crack on with your wonderful make.
Thank you very much, Andy. Brilliant. So yes, welcome everyone to our daffodil class, and I'm going to start from the ground up. So we're going to use some brown, and again, you could choose the size of your base, but I'm going to use about half a strip, or roughly half a strip. I've folded over the clay, but it's decided to snap where it wants to, so I'm just going to go with that, and I'm going to use about roughly half a strip and squidge this up and make a nice round base, or a kind of mud base. You could be that you use a bit more, but we'll see how we get on. Now, rather brilliantly, this is actually quite tough clay, so it's really making me work already, and I'm beginning to really regret my clothing choice. It was quite cold. Are
we going to get a Jim stripping down because it's too hot?
Well, I do oddly have a t-shirt which appears to have me on it as well. So
Brilliant. So I'm doing this as well, guys, at home. And one thing I would say is that the plasticine is quite hard. So have you got any tips for people who are at home who find that plasticine is just a little bit too hard to do with temperature, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The warmer you get the clay, the softer it gets, and the easier that's going to be for you. So you could use a hairdryer.
Okay.
Always to hand. This is just a budget hairdryer. It's nothing special. And for like £5 or £6 for a travel one, then that's ideal. Or find one on a car boot sale when and if they happen. That's absolutely fine. So I have one for just purely model making and warming up clay. Otherwise, use an adult, put it on a radiator or something like that as well.
I love that. Use an adult, put it on the radiator. I'm guessing you're talking about the plasticine, not the adult.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or just employ them to warm it through for you. So I'm just going to make a kind of mound shape initially, and it's just going to be nice and fingerprinty. I can add texture later on, but essentially I'm just going to make almost like a little volcano shape. Some of my cracking fingers there as well. So yeah, just pinching it up, getting a nice flat base, and obviously I don't want to stick the plasticine to my chopping board because my wife won't be too happy, but a nice kind of cone shape like that as a mound of earth, and then we'll be able to stick the stalk of the flower of the plant into that, and I think that'll be fine. So that's just a good starting point, I find. And I've also got just off screen a healthy supply of wet wipes as well. So what you might want to do is between colours, just give your hands a bit of a wipe and make sure that you don't transfer all that colour off, because that green is really punchy and it's so vibrant, which is relatively unusual for this plasticine. The blue is very vibrant, and the green is again really rich in pigment, and that can come off on everything else. So what I'd recommend you do is we're going to go from the soil to the top of the plant, and we're going to start making some petals.
Fantastic.
So nice.
We've got I've got some here, so I think I'm going to go for yellow. Are you going yellow as well?
Yeah, and then as I say, you could choose to have a different colour for the trumpet on the inside if you like, or you could go for the orange as well. I'm going to snap mine in half because I'm thinking I won't use all of it. And as I say, you could go smaller and then just add several heads. And I think it's quite nice to have a couple rather than just a single stem on there as well to add to that. And we'll see how we do for time, really. So I'm going to rely on you, Andy, to keep me in check, really. But that we
keep you in check. Crikey, this is a responsibility that I didn't know I'd signed up for. Those of you who've seen Jim working, it's such a pleasure. And don't worry if you're just watching this and not actually making, you're just watching. I know that you actually love the idea of people getting involved at any level that makes them comfortable, really, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with yourself, Andy, you're an avid follower and usually make along. But there have been times when you've been having to do other projects and you've listened in, or you've drawn it. So you've been playing around with graphics tablets and done a 2D version, or just listening. I think it's quite a calming thing. And if people find that it's like a little bit of respite from the day, then that's quite nice.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that having that ability to just sit there and take that time to watch people be creative or be creative, and as you say, you can do that in any way. And yes, I've sat there and drawn an armadillo, which when I didn't have time to actually get the plasticine out. So yeah, there we go, Jim. That's a question for you: plasticine or plasticine?
Well, it's yes. I tend to kind of jump between the two. So it's the bath thing, isn't it? So yeah, I tend to say I think plasticine. I think it's all about its plastic qualities. That's why it's called plasticine. Otherwise, it'd be plaster. People think it is from that from like plaster of Paris. So I do say plaster rather than plaster of Paris. So yeah, it's a minefield.
You're incorporating the north and the south divide. That's what we love. So we're working this yellow, and you've got about half of a stick you've got there. So what's the next stage?
Well, I've gone for more or less. Well, actually, I've broken off half a stick, but I'm just warming up a quarter of that at the moment. Well, a half of a half, and just because I'll see how much I'm actually going to use. And what I'm going to do is make 6 petals. So I'm going to have a central one on the top. And then 2 side petals, and then it's mirrored on the bottom. So I'm just going to take off small lumps and I tend to roll it into a ball to begin with. Most things begin with that, just to get the clay nice and work together. And that way, if there are any cracks, you can kind of smooth it in at this stage and really model that clay. And then what I'm going to do is start to then pinch out, well, flatten it slightly like a button shape, really. And it's not too thin, but you want it to be a little bit of body to it, but you want to kind of get that delicate petal shape. So I pinched out the top without really thinking about it or communicating it, to be honest. And that's to make the kind of the end of the petal, and you end up with a kind of teardrop shape.
Oh, wow, yeah. And I notice you've got your kind of almost your finger impression in it, which is giving it that natural sort of dish, isn't it?
Well, that's a good the way of doing it. If you get your thumb into there, you can almost create like a bowl, of a spoon, and it gives a little bit of depth in there. We can add some extra detail. What I have just done in the previous sculpt, just to see, working out how to make these things. They're a bit rough and ready, the first ones I made, because they're the most energetic one. It's just working out how to do it in the time. And that's always the challenge with model making sessions, is making it translatable and communicatable to people of all ages, and to fit it within a time scale as well. So we can add extra details later on, but that's what we're aiming for, is this nice kind of slightly bowl shape or teardrop shape. And if you want to make 6 of those, now they can all be perfectly symmetrical, or if you want the side ones, you can actually have a little bit of a left and a right bias as well. But as long as your top and bottom one are nice and symmetrical like that, then I think it will look quite nice. And again, you can change the size of them. So I've got a smaller one down there and a larger one on top, and you can mix and match that as much as you want.
That's a nice idea. I like that there's that kind of that freedom, really. And I think that's one of the things I find with your sessions, is you're giving people the tools. And I know you've done this before, it's like a kit, isn't it? But once you've made these petals, you could really build anything flower-wise out of it, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you don't have to use plasticine. You could use things like Fimo, like polymer clays, and bake them in the oven. You could use wax, even modeling wax, and make some very nice flowers, actually, like cartoon flowers. Or again, icing is a great one. I'm a big advocate of icing sculpture and making cake toppers and things like that.
Lovely.
In fact, you don't, sorry to butt in, but you don't even have to have a mound of earth. You could actually, if you had a small vase and you've got a load of those skewers, you could actually put them in a vase and have them as a kind of cartoon bunch of flowers, or in a pot or a glass or a mug. And I think that would look really nice as well. So you can kind of accessorize to your heart's content, really.
That's a really good idea. I mean, when you said about making this mound at the start, I was thinking it's very much like flower arranging. You have your lump of something you're sticking stuff into. So it is really quite, all these different creative things you start to think of when you're just sat down with a lump of clay.
Yeah, absolutely. Inspiration strikes, really. So so my initial thought was making a bed for it, but actually, really, like I say, you could just make it take a small vase and arrange them. I think that would be really quite nice, actually.
While we're doing these, and if we've got a bit of time to ask some questions, there's a few questions that come up to mind, and I've had many a question I've answered from you, but I think it'd be nice for people to hear something. So, when did you kind of start playing with plasticine? I know you play is key to everything you do. So when did you start playing?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Andy. I think that's the big thing for me. It's a bit like gambling when they say, when the fun stops, stop. So it has to be fun, and I have to get something out of it. I've been doing this for 20 odd years, and there's a lot of repetition in my job. So keeping it interesting, whether that be trying to beat your speed record for making an object to standard, or adding extra character, I'm always trying to find the play in that. And I think that came from a very early age, really. So from about the age of I'd say probably 4 or 5 was probably when I started playing with plasticine. It was previous. My mum would make Play-Doh for us at home, and it's kind of the gateway modelling material to plasticine. Kind of builds that kind of use of your hands and that coordination, but also building up hand strength as well.
Yeah, and then one of the things as well, I'm guessing I'm going to get the answer I think I'm going to get from you for this. When did you stop playing?
Well, yes. I don't, like I say, actually, I think I'm not going to surprise you, but I don't think I've ever really stopped. I think
Yay! That's what we like to hear. So to all the adults out there who are feeling like, oh, should I be playing? And the children who think it's one day going to dry up, don't worry, it doesn't. Jim's an example of where you can make a life out of play.
Yeah, I peaked at 4 years old and I've not really moved on. So no, I think, you know, I've got a deep love of playing with clay, and you know, and I use lots of other quite tricky processes, and you know, we look at 3D printing and we look at digital art and stuff. But the more I kind of go down that route, the more I hark back to this thing that really brought me my love in the first place. And I think that's important. And I think, you know, it's so readily available. And that's what I love about it, is that anybody can go to an art shop, or, well, not at the moment, but very soon you'll be able to go to an art shop and you know, mooch around the shop, and you know, pick up materials and have a play. And it is like a box of delights, an art shop, really going in there and choosing colours of plasticine or Fimo or what have you, or inks or paints. And there's something really nice about the ritual of actually collecting the art materials before you've even begun the process of actually making or drawing or painting something.
Yeah, totally agree. There's someone the other day I heard saying that you go into the process of buying materials, it's a hopeful thing. It's like books. Books are the hope that you'll have time to read them one day. You buy art supplies and plasticine, and it's the hope that one day you'll sit down and make something. And I think get it out of the packet and start playing with it. And I know we've had conversations where we're just chatting and you're playing with a bit of plasticine.
But we're doing it now.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to time-wise, you've got your 5 or 6 petals on the way. So just put this into context for people. If you're working on a production, and Jim's worked for many years at Ardman, how long would something like a model for a film or production, how long would you have to take to make that?
It varies wildly. From production to production. So, you know, the more complicated the puppet, the more time is obviously given. So, so something like, you know, obviously Wallace and Gromit take days or weeks or even months to make. You know, you've got to make the armatures, make molds, and then, you know, putting them into production. So you're breaking it down, rather like we are here, breaking it down into basic shapes, but then you're needing to make it recreatable. So you're never just having, or very rarely just having, one version of anything. So, you know, the molding process and the preparation process can take, you know, several months before you get into full swing of things. But then other things, you know, like the likes of Morph, or like little rabbits from the Were Rabbit movie, are very much quicker. And once you're up to speed and, you know, you've got the process down, you know, we're working at about 1 hour then, you know, so it could be anything from an hour to 18 months. You know, it's quite it's really that.
I think that's really interesting to put that context in place, because some people out there might be saying, oh, well, you know, I'm not, mine doesn't look very good after 1 hour. But let's be completely honest. After 1 hour, there's only so far you would expect it to have got anyway. So yeah, don't beat yourself up about that. And you have a terminology, don't you, for the bunnies per day? What is that?
BPD. So it's bunnies per day, or MPD, morphs per day.
Fantastic. Excellent. So we've got our petals, or if you haven't at home, don't worry. So you've got 6. What's the next stage then, Jim?
What I'm going to do now is, well, you've got 2 options. You can either make a disc to go in the middle and then stick all of your petals to it, or what I'm going to do is actually overlay them. So I'm actually going to squidge the top petal over the top of the ones that are going to go next to it. So I'm going to slightly, I suppose you'd say, tessellate. There we go, there's a good word for the day. We're going to tessellate them, and I'm going to overlap them slightly. So we'll get the first 3, have this very central one, like so.
I see.
And then you've got the other 2. And then we'll do the opposite with the others, and they'll sit, then you'll have this kind of, that shape, that daffodil shape. And that, actually, when you're making stuff like this, it really makes you start to look at how a plant or an animal is constructed. And I'm just kind of smoothing in the back there to kind of lock it in a bit.
So you're working on the back there as well, which, I mean, is also, if it's at the back and it can't be seen, if you can't see it, don't worry, you say, don't you? Absolutely. And also, we're going to hide that with the head of the flower. So we're going to put a green piece of clay on the back there, which can hide any kind of unsightly marks as well. So yeah, so you don't be too hard on yourself at this stage, really. That can come later if you want to.
but it's just about getting them overlapping and getting that nice feel. So you want that central one, the top and the bottom, to be sitting in front of the other two, and then you can try and join those two sections together then, as I say, by just dragging the clay across and knitting the clay back together again into a kind of pleasing shape. So there we go. It's quite quick actually. So you can see I can now join those together into a pleasing shape. And what I'm going to do is drag it across the front as well. The top and the bottom petal, I'm actually going to drag across and knit together. I'm also then going to do it on the back. And
okay. Can you just hold that a little bit closer to the camera so we can see so okay, so we've got the front and the top together, and then I see. So it's very good. Okay, but obviously any variation of this is completely fine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing too right or wrong about this really. And I just give it a little bit of a kind of bend round, so you kind of get that, kind of almost like a starfish shape. So it's leaning in a little bit, and then we're going to sandwich those petals with the orange or a yellow or a white cone in the middle. We're also going to then sandwich that with a green on the back to kind of hold it together. And you can get a bit fancy if you like, and you can put up a couple of creases in using cocktail sticks or sculpting tools, and just put in a couple of little lines to kind of give you the idea of the crease of petals. And again, you could really go to town with detailing, but I'm just going to put some in very quickly and crudely just to demonstrate. So you can see there we've got some lines starting to go in there, and that just that little attention to detail doesn't take long.
Yeah, definitely. And I noticed you're using cocktail stick, and you said something there about different tools. Now I know you have favorite tools that you've had for years, but just to kind of like bring it down to people who might be sat at home again with a lump of plastic thinking, I don't know what to use. You're also a great one for raiding the creative box, and I'm sure the kitchen drawers if you're allowed to. What could people use instead of a traditional modelling tool?
Well, I've been known to use, let me see, I've just got something over out of camera shot. If I haven't glued it down, an old paintbrush handle, they're really great. And they're often, this one is a terrible example actually, but they're often really nicely rounded on the end. So they make really great sculpting tools. Pencils, as I say, if you find yourself in a coffee shop and you pick up a mixing stick, don't throw it away. Wipe it off, put it in your jacket or whatever, wrap it in a napkin and bring it home and use it as a sculpting tool. You can sand them as well. You can get really fancy, and sand the edges and get a very nice, low cost sculpting tool as well.
Well, I was inspired by you, Jim, as you know, earlier this year, and I got a small piece of holly out of the garden and sat for a very happy day whittling it. And now I have this very, very strong and durable sculpting tool, which was made purely off the recommendation that you said, try anything out. And once you get something you love, you're going to carry on using it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can make truly, bespoke tools to your needs. As you kind of get more experience, you'll find that actually you'll find certain shape tools that you really like, so you can then mimic those and make your own. Now, I'm going to go for orange, but you could, as I say, carry on with the yellow if you wish. And I'm going to make this nice trumpet shape that goes in the middle. It kind of gives it's enough for it to be a mouth in its own right, or you can add a little mouth on the side. And I've done both options. So I've done a kind of tubular mouth on the side of this one, but I actually prefer the smaller one with just a kind of almost like duck-like cone there. So I'm just going to take off a small amount of orange, but again, you can choose the size of the cone that you want. You might want a little one or a great big honking beak of a mouth as well. You've got plenty of options there to play around with, really.
It's such a great choice, the daffodil. I actually grew up with a family of daffodil growers, and so it's quite a lovely thing for me to have a chance to make. And I'd never even considered this as an option for something that you could make. So it's just, I love the fact that you come up with these ideas for everyday objects that you will see, everyone will see them at this time of year. So it's lovely, a lovely chance to make something.
Well, yeah, it's literally narcissism. So
here we go. All the puns are coming out.
I've been waiting that. I sat on that for a little while. So
I'm racking my brains now to think of some, but I think probably you've really kind of like peaked with that one. So there we go. So you're making this cone. So you've got a small amount of, as you said, you can use as much or as little as you want. Small amount. And what are we doing with this orange?
Again, get it nice and warm, and you'll notice each colour comes off on your hands for one, but also varies in texture. So some are softer than others. In fact, this orange is a nice, really nice and soft in this case. And again, batches do vary a little bit, and obviously how old your clay is as well. But as I say, it's always worth, even if you find that the pack is the right shape, it's always worth re-squashing it and getting those oils mixed back in together again. So I'm going to start with a ball of clay, and then if you get your hands in a kind of V-like shape, like that, run them backwards and forwards a bit. You can kind of make, there we go, the famous carrot shape.
Excellent. The carrot, which is carrot coloured. I think that we are peaking here somewhat with this session. We're doing carrots in a carrot coloured plasticine. So we've got this little carrot. I like that already.
And what I'm going to do now is you can either use fingers to tease it out, or if I find where I put my pencil, here we go, a pencil or a cocktail stick or something, and just poke the inside of that carrot and open it up so you can see how.
I see. So you're waggling it around to making a mold.
You poke it in, and you can do the same with a skewer or something like that. Just rotate it around like that. It opens up a nice socket on the inside. So we end up with a kind of,
that's a really nice process, isn't it? Doing that, it's really fun. It's the sort of thing that you're told not to do as a child. Is don't put your finger in there. But with this, you're allowed to do this.
Absolutely, and you don't want to go too thin, because what we're going to do then is start to pinch out a kind of, well, you can see on the side here, you can choose how many little kind of almost like petals. They're not petals in as such in a classic form, but you can start to then pinch out these little scallops, like crimping a pasty.
Oh yes.
And then just kind of, and that will help to open it up. And again, you can get more technical. Rather than just using fingers, you could use tools. But I quite like the handmade look for it. I think it's got a naivety that I think I just find charming, really.
Yeah, I love that. It's sort of very much, sometimes it looks like a 3D cartoon, and sometimes it's got a much more sort of a realistic quality to it. And I think this really suits the kind of cartoon style.
And again, you can go as realistic or as cartoon as you like. So you could, really go for a more naturalistic study of a daffodil, if you wished. There's beautiful Victorian models you'll find of flowers and of anemones in glass and things like that. So you can, use these other unusual materials to make these very fine things. And you could do the same with clay as well. And that would be rather nice. But I like to, with the cartooniness, I like to keep that, that funny and thummy catchphrase, really. I think it really suits. So there we have a nice funnel.
Okay, I'm gonna show myself up. I've got I'm gonna show the screen what I've got here. Let's see if this works. Here we go. So I've gone for 6. The reason I went for 6 is because by the time I'd got round to the other side, I realised that I hadn't got any more space to pull out different edges.
Well, I think that's absolutely fine. If you look at I haven't studied them too closely, so it's a bit more going from a little bit from memory, really. But you can mix that up, and you can go as fine with your detail as you like, really. And I'm just going to push that into the middle of that flower head now.
Oh, that's fun, isn't it? That's really fun. It kind of instantly comes to life.
Yeah. Well, I realised, Andy, there's something I've forgotten to do. So what you can do is you can either take that off, which is what I'm going to do, or you can fit it in afterwards. What I'm going to do is take a little bit more of that yellow, and I don't know if you'll have seen on the flower head, but if I just show you up close, I've put an inner petal on that central one to give me an eyebrow.
Oh yes, there's a little tiny miniature, little kind of overhang eyebrow.
Yeah, so I'm going to add that in, which is a kind of a pea-sized ball of clay. One of my leaves has dropped off. They're easily off and onable, so I can put that on later on. I should have left it well alone. So I'm just going to make a pea-sized ball of clay, and I'm going to pinch one end of it, so it's kind of into a kind of little cheese wedge shape, and that's going to give us a nice eyebrow. And I'm going to put that into one of those central petals, the one that I want to be on the top, to give me a little bit of an eyebrow. And then I'm going to replace the cone afterwards. Now,
so if it all goes wrong when you're doing this, what do you say to people if they get a moment where it just doesn't work, it doesn't look right? What do they do with what they've started to make?
Well, it's just happened to me, and so So you can, it's absolutely fine. There's always a reset, and you can just kind of re-squash bits and pieces, put it together again. That's absolutely fine. And yeah, it does happen. And you know, experienced my first nervous breakdown live on air.
As long as you're not going to ask me to describe what the next step is, because I have not got a clue. But I think you've always said that if in doubt, just give it a squash in your hand, start again. Don't worry too much. I'm just going to show you some of the bits and bobs I've got here while Jim just has a look at what he's up to. So talking about equipment, I actually have I'm a printmaker, and this is an old printmaking sort of tool for etching into metal. And I many moons ago broke the tip. And it sat in a box, not useful for anything. I couldn't get around to sharpening it. And actually this proved really useful for putting details in eyes and things like that. And as Jim said, obviously learning from the master, I have a paintbrush here, which is a very cheap and cheerful paintbrush. And it is very deep gloss paint all over it. So it's really smooth and perfect for the modeling Jim was talking about. So they're quite fun. And then I have some really basic little things that I got, which are just little plastic ones. Now, they're okay, but they're not ideal. But you can actually sand these down as well. So there are some of the things that, you know, I've got together over a year of following Jim and bothering him and learning all about model making myself. So yeah, let's go back to Jim and see where he's up to.
So I've managed to recover it, so that's good. So I'm going to now add a couple of little eyeballs in there as well. So you can just about make it out. I think in there you can see the eyebrow that's kind of inset. And I thought it just looks like an inner petal really. So we can kind of cheat a little bit of anatomy into that flower. And then I'm going to, as I say, eyes, you don't really get them in flowers, but I'm going to put some in just because I think it's a quite nice thing to do. But again, you could just go for cartoony flowers and you don't have to worry about that whatsoever. And the joy of a 2D cartoon is they cheat loads of things. So you can actually draw the eyeballs onto the petals and you don't have to worry about how they sit in there. So that's why I've created that extra petal in there to give it a little bit of a, you know, a kind of a platform to build it on there. I'm going to give my hands a wipe while I'm doing that because I've got a kind of real orange glow, summer glow on my fingers there. So again, wet wipes, try and buy environmentally friendly ones if you can. There's still lots around on the market, mostly, you know, water-based and stuff, so they're skin kind as well. But it's just a good idea. Or use a towel or something just to get the worst of the colours off, and that way you can kind of keep everything clean. And that's one of the hardest things in working in animation and working with clay or icing or what have you, is to stop the pigments from running onto each other. So I get through a few wet wipes in a day, just trying to keep everything clean. But yeah, 2 little peas for eyes, pop those in there. And again, you can have them spaced out if you wish to, or you can have them nice and close together. And again, you can choose the eyeball size. You might want big googly eyes, or you might want little tiny eyes in there.
And you always say that once you get the eyes on, you start to really see the character, don't you? So it's sort of, it's not inanimate, but it is pretty much inanimate until you get those eyes on.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's a charm, like you say, actually, of just doing it, but it's a little bit dead until you've got those eyes in there. So you can just add a little bit of a pupil in there as well, a tiny dot of clay, a little ball of clay. That could be black or it could be a different color. So you could go for green, go for brown in there, and or blue or what have you, and play around with that personality. Your eyes don't have to be the same size either. You could have one small and one large as well. That'd be absolutely fine. You can make them a little bit more bonkers looking as well. So I quite like that.
At this point, this is the bit that probably I found the most frustrating at the start, was working on this scale, this miniature scale. But you've always suggested to people, haven't you, that, you know, obviously with the eyes we have to go this size, but not to work small. Do you want to say a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, I think everybody wants to go really super tiny. Now these are, I'd say they're about 12, 13 centimeters high. And that's quite a nice size to work on. It becomes not too fiddly. And I'm just putting in a pupil using a cocktail stick. I might have to slightly jiggle it to release it afterwards. and just press that on. So yes, so people go super tiny, like a couple of centimeters across, and make these super tiny but beautiful sculptures, but they get quite stressed. I'm like, well, just make your life a little bit easier and make them a bit bigger. Nobody's dictating a size to you. You know, obviously the smaller you make them, the more you can make of them. And that's got a joy in itself, but make your life easier and go a little bit bigger.
Well, I was just thinking about it, this multicolored rainbow pack that you can get, which you can get for about a £5, is enough there for 3 or 4 kids to make a couple of different coloured flowers each, if you let them, you know, so don't hold back, let them have a ball of plasticine and get making, because there's nothing more frustrating than having a small amount. And I have tried to make it when I've run out of colours, and it's not worth it. So I just made a purple dinosaur, because you just said, Andy, just use one colour. So
well, who's to say? You know, who's to say that the world wasn't a big kind of disco inferno of pink and purple dinosaurs? I mean, scientists are the ones that would say not. But it's.
Excellent. So we've got the main sort of face and all the petals and everything done. So what's the next thing we're going to be doing?
Well, you could add optional eyebrows if you wish.
They're
a real optional extra, but they do add a little bit of personality, I find. So again, it's all about bringing them to life and adding that extra little bit of something in there. So you could have them looking angry, or with a furrowed brow, or surprised. As surprised as they are to be alive and be sent to daffodils. Again, you could do all sorts of things with them. You could put a bee in the end of the, if you want to go tiny, you could put a bee in the end of the cone there as well.
That's a really good idea. I mean, it's got a real sort of it's got a real Welsh feel about it. So you could put them with a Welsh flag or something like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see over here, although one of my leaves has drooped, you can make them into leaves, into kind of almost kind of arms.
Oh, really, wow, yeah, definitely.
You can start to really add some personality in there. So they could be holding a flag or what have you as well. So I think that's kind of, again, the opportunity to accessorize what you're making is really good fun.
Fantastic.
Now, so I am going to move on to the green, actually.
Excellent.
And, you're at something of an advantage over me with this one, Andy, because you've got meat skewers or bamboo sticks, which are brilliant.
Yes.
But again, you could use, if you've got a bit of wire, you could put some wire in there and add them on. I've got a cat invasion as well. There we go.
I absolutely love it. I think that is the best invasion we could hope for as well.
Well, Tony Hart doesn't get that, so
Do you want to introduce us to your wonderful cat?
This is Yaffle, and Yaffle is my one-eyed wonder, and yes, he's always curious as to what we're up to. So
fantastic. Hello, Yaffle. Thank you for joining us. We're in the throes of making daffodils with Jim Parkyn, model maker extraordinaire, who has his helper with him.
That'll teach me to not close the door. So I'm going to take some green, and again, it all depends on the size of the stalk you want, really. So I'm just going to take off a small amount, about a third of a strip, and you can employ these lines as well that run down there to help you. So I'm going to take 2 of those, I think. Actually, I'm going to be generous. So I'm going to squash them together to make the stalk. And if I turn my flower around, you can see there's kind of quite a large amount of clay on the back there to help back.
Yeah.
So you can do that, and if you've got a longer stick, you can actually have the stick going through the stalk, so you can mould around the stick or drill it through. So if you spin a cocktail stick or a bamboo skewer and then spin it, it will like drill its way through the length. So if you don't go too thin with your the stalk of your plant, you can then pin that onto the plant as well. And if you had wire, you can actually have it pinning through the cone into the back of the head and then down the stem as well.
So I've just done exactly what you said, and I had a spin of the skewer, and that worked really well. Now, one of the things that might happen, which just happened to me, I'm going to show people on the screen. I've actually got a slight breakout, so we can just simply mold over that.
Yeah, sculpt it round. You can even roll it on the table. Then once you've got it squidged in, and kind of help to bond that together. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
And you've said that word before, thummy and funny, and I love that. In fact, don't get too het up about this.
No, keep it kind of chunky shapes, chunky and funny, not unlike myself. And so I'm not going to go too long with this stem because I want to maybe not even add a stick down the full length on this one. So we'll see how we go on. So I might even use half a stick just to hold the funnel and the stem onto the head of the flower. So I'm going to use half one. I've got some not great quality actually cocktail sticks.
You're putting it right the way through the trumpet.
For this one, I'm going to. It's a slightly different way to what I made it before, but I think it'll work, and I can use it almost like a little tongue that I could push onto the head as well.
That just gives you that stability of it being attached to the stem behind.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
I suppose it also helps that you can then make it posable. So if you go on to, as you've said in the past, you can animate these yourself, which is sort of like destroying them, really, isn't it? You said. I love that. You said destroy them by animation. That's
it. And I'm destroying mine live as we speak.
I've always been amazed by Jim's ability, and he hasn't faltered. And he'll say, "Oh no, it's not quite going to plan." The ability to make things, and I've seen Jim at work where he's come on, been given a suggestion, and made it there and then within that hour. And those are the fun things, aren't they? And you call it sketching, don't you, with clay?
Yeah, absolutely. So mine is completely fallen apart, but that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to just rebuild it as I go along, and don't be afraid to do that. It's absolutely fine for that to happen, and just kind of learn from your mistakes. So I thought I'd try something different, a bit maverick, and it's not quite worked this time, but that's okay because I can just re-squidge it as I go along and kind of remodel it and rethink it, and yeah, it's all rescuable at the end of the day. That's the good thing.
So those of you doing this at home, you might think, "Oh, time flies." We've done about 40 minutes of making, but I think the progress you can see in 40 minutes. We've made 6 petals, eyes, eyebrow, a trumpet, a stem, and a base for it. So building those parts up. If you broke them all down into little sections, 5 minutes on each, less than 5 minutes on each thing. So you could do it over a few days if you wanted to. And as Jim has said, once you made these sort of kits up of flowers, you could sit there and make 50 petals and have a putting together session as well if you wanted to. So most importantly, this is the one thing that Jim's taught me over the last year, is just take it with a pinch of salt and enjoy the making process. And I have made many a failure. I don't share those. The luxury of not being the model maker amongst the pair of us. But it is a really fun and therapeutic thing to do. So look at that. He's just managed to put back in the space it took me to fill and waffle. You've just put your whole sculpture back together.
So I have to rebuild the eyes, but that's okay because they're just nice, simple shapes. And you will find that bits get squashed. And then a top tip, actually, if you do end up with like kind of squashy eyeballs, there we go. I'm living, proving that these things do go wrong. You could just squash those up, and I could make that into a grey, so you can blend colours together and make other tones as well. So I don't waste the clay. I'll use it for something else along the way. And again, it's not having the fear of doing that. You can use it for all sorts of things.
So the benefit of having the bamboo is you can go really tall. So I've got at least the sort of 5 or 6 inch daffodil, but that's because there's a bamboo right the way through it. But it is also lolloping about. Its head is waving in the wind already.
Well, that's the good thing. And actually, I'm regretting not having any bamboo skewers. I think the next time I'm allowed out, I'll get out there and treat myself to some longer form sticks, so I can actually do that. And increase the length of the stem. But you can go for dwarf daffodils that are equally charming as well.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant.
So then after that, really, it's down to your own creativity. So adding leaves. So if I just quickly, I'm going to leave that lying there for the moment, and that will firm up a little bit. And if you find that your hands are very warm, or you've used your hairdryer a bit too excessively, then you can always just let them cool, let them rest, and the clay will firm back up again as well. So again, sometimes it's just not rushing it. and allowing yourself the time to let the clay recover a little bit and just stiffen up, and that will help.
And one of the things that you always stress, what does plasticine, what household appliance does plasticine not go in?
Yes, don't put it in the oven. So don't bake this. It will firm up again. And as I say, as long as you keep the dust off them and the sunlight off them, so don't put them in the windowsill, and you'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, don't put them in the oven, because they don't melt as such. They just get a bit sweaty, and then it kind of crumbles or bursts into flames. So yeah, don't do that at home.
We've done a little bit of safety, health and safety for you there, which was riveting as always. But seriously, don't put them in the oven. I haven't been tempted to, but I have actually left some out on the side, and it's in the sun, and it's done that. It's gone the opposite you'd think. It's actually crumbled, and also if you leave them on a piece of paper or something, you can see the oils come out of them. So I tend to put mine on a piece of. I've got a piece of like toughened glass that mine sit on.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely brilliant for like I say, for remaining animatable, and that's what you want, obviously, for a stop motion film. You want it to stay flexible, but eventually, after months, or weeks, it will start to firm up and become a much more solid thing. So the leaves, I'm just going to make, again, carrot shapes. So I'm going to start with a carrot shape, a long, thin carrot, and then I'm going to flatten it with my thumb and finger, and I can add those on. And again, you can have more than two leaves, but two looks like arms.
So let's have a look at that one, Jim, close up. You've done the carrot, and then you've made this really quite, intuitively. That's what it is, isn't it? It's a leaf shape, and then you've just squashed the bottom, and then does that just squash onto the side of the stem?
You could actually even taper it on there and gather it up on the bottom of the stem as well.
Okay.
Or you could bury it in the soil a little bit. What you could do is put your finger in, or put a pencil into the soil and open up a socket like that, like a crater, in which you can then put the flower into.
And yet again, you're doing it, Jim. You're allowing people the freedom to use this as a starting point. And I think that's what's just so important. Starting point, not finishing point.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, sometimes what it is I'm guilty of is just losing myself in the moment. So I've flattened this carrot shape, and then again, you could use a cocktail stick or a paintbrush handle, and I'm just going to draw a line in there to give it kind of the sense of a central vein. And again, you can soften the edges. A good tip is actually, I don't really like to use cling film because it's not that great for the environment, but if you put cling film over a sculpt and then draw in lines, you can actually make a much more natural, non-scraping line, so it hasn't got those little bits of feathery edges on it, and you can really kind of make a much more natural line there. You can do that front and back as well. You could even put little ribs in there and things like that as well if you wanted to. It's worth having a look at a real flower to have it as a life model in front of you as well. And you'd be surprised how much you learn about the construction of a flower by recreating it as well.
But it's interesting you say that, because I know that over the past year I've learned from you how to make all different sorts of animals, and now I understand the anatomics, I suppose it is, of an animal, the way that some animals' legs bend forwards, not backwards, and little things like that, which from making, like, for example, a horse or something, you start to see, don't you, the way that their bodies and arms and legs move in completely counterintuitive to how humans are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really opens up, and you realise how little that attention you've actually paid to a chicken or to a horse, or an animal that you've never seen before, and just working out the basic shapes that go into it. And it's often food items, I find, but also working out, is it an arm-like leg? So the front legs are often like that, but also the back legs are often bending in the same way, and working out where the toes sit, and how the foot joins the, hits the ground as well. And it's giving them a sense of, obviously gravity plays a large part of this, but it's giving them a sense of weight and a sense of poise as well. So they're being lifted from the ground, but they're also very much, standing there as well.
I think it's so nice to see that, and actually got something here to show you, so I know you're going to love these. I've actually got and found my old dinosaur collections, and there you go, an example. Jim's spoken about these a lot in the past. These are great little plastic, mass-produced things, but look at the legs on there. And Jim's taught me all about, how the legs move and the direction of them, and they're a great starting point, aren't they?
Absolutely, and they've played fast and loose with science, and come up with something that's really, rather engaging. And I have a deep, kind of love of those old plastic toys. I think there's something really rather brilliantly quite avant-garde, actually. Some of them, they're kind of really, just gone hell for leather with the spikes and put them all over them. And some of it's based on science, but some of it is just what makes a great toy. And that's brilliant, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So Jim's obviously works at Aardman and is an animator and model maker in his own right. And you do all sorts of things. So you normally, when we talk about Digital Craft Festival, you'd normally go to festivals like the Craft Festival, and you do Amazing Scene Machine, don't you? Do you want to tell people a little bit while you're finishing this up? People might be finishing theirs. What that's about?
Yeah, it's an opportunity. Well, it's interactive art, really. It's teaching people how to play with clay on a kind of a very loose basis. So essentially, I make a capture your scene. So were we in Bovey Tracy, I'd be there with a big picture frame, filling it with a kind of painting of plasticine and capturing an element of that party, and then encourage you, Andy, and the rest of the public to come along and make yourselves, or make something that you've seen at an event, and then we'll add it frame by frame. So every time I add a bit of clay, we take a picture, and you end up with a time-lapsed art piece. So you get a film, but you also get a publicly created, finished art piece at the end of it, which is different every time. Even if you return to the same place, everybody's going to make something slightly different. And it's just a really good, as I say, fun bit of art and animation all combined into one thing.
I think it's just one of those things that I completely buy into it. It's togetherness, it's creativity, it's fine art, it's animation, it's everything, and it brings it down to a 3-year-old all the way up to a 93-year-old and other ages either side of that. So it's a wonderful thing. So check out Jim as well. So Jim's Instagram is at Jim Parkyn, spelled JIMPARKYN. We've also got a Digital Craft Festival, and I myself am Andy Greenacre. So you can find us all on Instagram. And if you do have a go at making these wonderful daffodils or any other things that you're inspired to do, tulips, snowdrops, whatever, and any other things, then please do tag at Digital Craft Festival. Use the hashtag Digital Craft Festival. You've got at Jim Parkyn, and you can also tag me at Andy Greenacre if you wish. And we would love to see your creations, wouldn't we, Jim?
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully you'll have more luck than I did on this one. Andy's certainly done a brilliant job of his. So, but yeah, please do share with us. We absolutely love to see everybody else's creation, and create a clay community as well.
Yeah, because community clay time is something that you created in lockdown, and you did these sessions, and so do check out community clay time and Jim's website, because you do lots of wonderful things, getting people involved with being creative. And I know you're a massive advocate for people to just give it a go, start playing with clay, or pick up a pencil, or try something out, because you never know where it might lead.
Absolutely, it's been really fun, Andy, and I look forward to enjoying the rest of the festival as well, and seeing other makers, and seeing you chat to other people as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us, and we'll hand back to Digital Craft Festival by the brilliant Sarah James. Please do check out digitalcraftfestival.co.uk, running from the 26th to the 28th of March. Thanks, Jim. Give us a wave.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye.